Welcome to Skytech-Lens. In September 2025, the world watched as a simmering crisis exploded. President Donald Trump, under pressure from drought-ravaged states, made a stunning demand. The U.S. should control Canada's freshwater resources. This wasn't a request. It was an ultimatum, broadcast globally as a matter of American survival. Trump insisted that Canada's rivers and lakes were essential for U.S. jobs and the American way of life, framing the demand as a test of the historic friendship between the two nations. The announcement shattered decades of peaceful cooperation and sent shockwaves through financial markets. Canadians and Americans alike wondered if their alliance was about to collapse over water. Years of worsening drought had pushed the U.S. West to the brink, with reservoirs at historic lows and industries facing shutdowns. Trump's move was a desperate gamble to solve a domestic crisis by forcing Canada's hand. But instead of relief, he ignited an international firestorm. The world now faced a confrontation that would redefine the U.S.-Canada relationship. The stage was set for a battle over one of the planet's most vital resources. Ottawa's response was immediate and resolute. Prime Minister Mark Carney declared, "Canada is not for sale. Our sovereignty is not negotiable." He framed the issue as a matter of national identity, not just trade. Carney reminded the world that Canada, steward to nearly 20% of global freshwater, would not be bullied. Canadians rallied behind him, uniting across political lines. Internationally, leaders praised Canada's stand, seeing it as a defense of the rules-based order. Carney's refusal positioned Canada as a stable, principled partner amid growing global uncertainty. The message was clear: Canada's water was off-limits. The crisis had become a defining moment for Canadian independence. Canada's refusal triggered immediate hardship across the U.S. In California's Central Valley, canals dried up and farms went fallow. Crop yields plummeted and food prices soared. In the Midwest, factories slowed or shut down as water shortages forced layoffs. The semiconductor industry in Arizona, vital for tech and defense, was forced to ration production. Hydroelectric dams in the Pacific Northwest ran low, pushing utilities to reactivate costly coal and gas plants. Electricity bills spiked and panic buying of bottled water swept cities. The crisis was no longer distant, it was a daily struggle for millions. The American dream was evaporating, one drop at a time. The water standoff had become a national emergency. The consequences were real, immediate, and deeply personal. Behind the headlines were the stories of Americans whose lives were upended. Maria Sanchez, a farmer in California, watched her fields wither and laid off half her crew. "We always believed there was a solution," she said. "This year, the water just stopped." In Nevada, David Chen closed his food processing plant after water cuts and produce shortages made business impossible. Nearly half of small businesses in the West now listed water access as their top threat. In Detroit, auto worker Frank Miller faced layoffs for the first time in decades, not from trade wars, but from water scarcity. "My water bill doubled and now I don't have a paycheck," he said. Experts warned this was a structural shock, not a temporary downturn. Investor confidence collapsed, and supply chains unraveled. Goldman Sachs projected the dispute could cost the U.S. $130 billion in lost output. The crisis exposed the fragility of America's economy. For millions, the water war was a personal disaster. The nation's sense of security was gone. The ripple effects would last for years. As America faltered, the world turned to Canada. The EU drafted plans for direct water talks with Ottawa, bypassing Washington. Chinese conglomerates offered billions for Canadian water infrastructure and long-term access. Japan and South Korea, wary of U.S. unpredictability, sought Canadian water and energy contracts. Mexico deepened its partnership with Canada, signing new trade deals independent of the U.S. The old North American order was shifting. While the U.S. doubled down on isolationism, its neighbors built new alliances. Canada was emerging as a global resource power. Canada's resilience was no accident. It was the result of years of strategic diversification. After U.S. tariffs in 2018, Canada accelerated trade with Europe and Asia. The Trans Mountain Pipeline opened Asian markets for Canadian oil, reducing reliance on the U.S. Domestic reforms created a true single market, boosting GDP and internal strength. Canada doubled defense spending, meeting NATO targets and supporting Ukraine. The country was now more robust, less vulnerable to U.S. pressure. Economic and military strength gave Canada new global influence. The strategy builds strength at home, project confidence abroad. Canada was ready for a new era. Prime Minister Carney's leadership redefined Canada's global role. In a landmark speech, he outlined a vision: strength at home, diversify abroad, defend values. Canada's resource wealth became diplomatic leverage, not a weapon. Carney highlighted Canada's clean energy leadership and critical mineral production. He positioned Canada as a reliable partner, not a subordinate. World leaders welcomed Canada's principled stance, seeking stable alliances. Domestically, Carney's focus on innovation and green tech resonated. Defense spending soared in public support, reflecting a new national confidence. Canada was no longer just a friendly neighbor, it was a global player. The country embraced its new identity with pride. The water dispute revealed two nations on diverging paths. Canada's economy grew, inflation stayed low, and consumer confidence soared. The country felt united and optimistic, rallying behind Carney's leadership. In contrast, the US faced slow growth, high inflation, and plummeting confidence. Trump's aggressive strategy backfired, drawing criticism from all sides. Key water treaties were suspended, scaring off billions in investment. Canada's unity and resilience stood in stark contrast to America's turmoil. The crisis forced Canada to become more self-reliant and innovative. America's global standing diminished, while Canada's reached new heights. The northern nation had discovered its strength. The 20,000 streets samman, natsan kuripan 25 water crisis marked a turning point in North American history. Canada's bold stand ended an era of US dominance and signaled a new, multipolar world. The world now saw Canada as a rising leader, not just a neighbor. True security, it became clear, was built on resources, resilience, and alliances. Canada's investments in trade, energy, and unity paid off, earning global respect. For the US, the crisis was a reckoning. Aggressive demands had backfired. America's prosperity depended on partnership, not ultimatums. Canada would continue to build on its newfound strength in global partnerships. The lesson: in an interconnected world, no nation can stand alone. The future belonged to those who chose cooperation over confrontation. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more updates.